Well, good day and welcome to the online part of our service for today. My name is Deanne Carter and I'm the pastor of Margarettsville and Lower Granville Baptist Churches, and I welcome you. Thank you for joining with me. I also want to remind you that we do meet in person, at least for the moment anyway, at Margarettsville 10 a.m. in the morning and Granville Beach at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And if you are in the area, we would love to have you join with us at that time. Today I'd like to read from the Old Testament book of Hosea, and I'm going to be reading from the NIV chapter 1. So Hosea chapter 1. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, son of Beeri, during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the reign of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, king of Israel. When the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, "Go take to yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness, because the land is guilty of the vilest adultery in departing from the Lord." So he married Gomer, daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to Hosea, "Call him Jezreel, because I will soon punish the house of Jehu for the massacre at Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. In that day I will break Israel's bow in the valley of Jezreel." Gomer conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. Then the Lord said to Hosea, "Call her Lo-ruhamah, for I will no longer show love to the house of Israel, that I should at all forgive them. Yet I will show love to the house of Judah, and I will save them, not by bow, sword, or battle, or by horses and horsemen, but by the Lord their God." After she had weaned Lo-ruhamah, Gomer had another son, and then the Lord said, "Call him Lo-ammi, for you are not my people, and I am not your God." Yet the Israelites will be like the sand on the seashore, which cannot be measured or counted. In the place where it was said to them, "You are not my people," they will be called sons of the living God. The people of Judah and the people of Israel will be reunited, and they will appoint one leader and will come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Say of your brothers, "My people," and of your sisters, "My loved one." Amen. Well, today we're going to start a new series. And over the course of the next 12 weeks or so, we're going to study part of the Bible that isn't looked at all too often. We're going to look at the 12 minor prophets. And I know that you have heard of them before and you've maybe even studied them before, but can you name them? Do you know all 12? Do you know what they said? Do you know what relevance they have for you and for me today? These books are the last 12 books in the Old Testament. They begin with Hosea and they end with Malachi. And I want to encourage you as we go along each week to spend time reading them at home and meditating on them and asking God to speak to you through them. Now, they're not known as minor prophets because of their importance. They are just as important as the major prophets of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. But they're referred to as minor simply because of their length. They have less chapters, they're shorter, but their message is just as important. The minor prophets were individuals, and in this case they were all men, who spoke on behalf of God. In the Old Testament, a prophet has the role of holding the people accountable to the God of Israel. And they also had important messages for the people of that day of what was to come. But you know, there are things in there for us too. things that can help us understand, things that reveal the character of God more to us. So I hope that as we go along, we'll sit back and we'll say, oh, I never thought of that before, or oh, I didn't know that, or maybe even, wow. So let's dive in. The 12 minor prophets, they can be divided into different groups, 3 time periods. Those that prophesied before the exile, during the exile, and after the exile. Now, they also could be divided depending upon who they prophesied to. Some of them prophesied to the northern kingdom, some to the southern kingdom. But we're going to learn more about that as we go along with each one. When the priesthood collapsed in the days of Eli and the kingship after the death of Solomon and his reign, God did not abandon his people, even though they had turned their backs on him. They no longer worshiped him. They worshiped idols and other gods that they had created with their hands. But God still loved them, and he wanted them to come back to him. So he made a way, and he reminded them by sending them the prophets. Hosea lived in the northern kingdom of Israel about 200 years after they had broken off from southern Judah. And the times were dark. They were really difficult times. God hadn't changed, but the people had. God still loved them, even though they didn't love him. The nation was corrupt. It was immoral and perverse and crime-ridden. And after only one more generation, it would be swept away in terrible judgment. In 722, the Assyrian army would come in and decimate Israel. But they didn't know that. Hosea knew it. God had revealed it to him. And God called Hosea to warn the people. And this is what the book of Hosea is all about. Now, when we stop and we look at our society today, it's dark out there, isn't it? It shares some of these characteristics. Sin is everywhere. God and his will and our commitment to him, it's often the last thing that's thought about. It's all about me in our society today. But as God was with Israel through the dark times, he's with us as well, wooing us back to him. Don't you think it would be nice to know what is coming, and if it's bad, how we might be able to avoid it? We would change, wouldn't we? We would see the seriousness of it, and we would do our best to stop it from happening. Well, Hosea told the people of that day what was going to happen to them if they didn't change. He prophesied longer than any of the other prophets, for over 50 years, I read. And this is what these 14 chapters in this little book are all about. His life story and his prophetic oracles. But let me tell you a secret. The people did not listen to him. But before we get into more of the prophet at this time, I want to take you back in your memory or forward into your dreams, wherever you find yourself in life. And I want you to think about your wedding day. You have finally found your Prince Charming or your princess, and all the boxes have been checked on your wish list, and your soon-to-be mate has met your ideals, or at least the majority of them. He or she is kind, they're compassionate, they're so loving, they are supportive, good personality, good humor, strong, handsome, beautiful, whatever's on your list. You remember it, right? Well, in our passage today, we have poor Hosea, and we're going to see who Hosea marries as we go along. So I want you to listen carefully because it really helps us understand the book. God had a special plan for Hosea, and I know you love it like I do. When God has a special plan for us, it'll be so wonderful, it'll be so exciting, and we think anyway, but that's not always the case, is it? God called Hosea to be a prophet. And in chapter 1, verse 2, we see God wanted to communicate to the people of the northern kingdom of Israel. He had something really important that he wanted them to know. And he wanted Hosea to be the one to deliver that message. It was an urgent message. His judgment was coming if they didn't change their ways. And it was coming very soon. Now, God could do anything in any way that he wanted to. And he often used prophets in miraculous ways to tell his messages to the people. Landon McDonald says some of the prophets saw elaborate visions, like Isaiah, who got to see the throne room of God. Ezekiel got to see dry bones come to life. And Daniel could interpret dreams. Jonah saw thousands give their lives to God. Zechariah saw visions of a flying scroll, olive trees, and women with wings. Hosea got to marry a prostitute and have kids. Oh, I bet that wasn't on his wish list for a characteristic for his wife. Oh, poor Hosea. Well, God had a plan. And God was going to use Hosea's marriage to Gomer, who was a prostitute, as an analogy of his relationship with Israel. His life was going to be a walking sermon illustration to the people of Israel. Can you imagine how he must have felt being told to marry a woman that would be unfaithful to him? He probably didn't want to. Who would, right? But it didn't matter to Hosea what Hosea wanted. What mattered to him is being faithful to what God wanted. And he knew that God was directing him to marry Gomer. So he marries her. And by doing so, Hosea experiences in his life the dilemma that God faced and still faces today. Loving someone that is unfaithful and does not love you back. This book really helps us see God's point of view through Hosea. Now, we don't know for sure if Gomer was a prostitute before her marriage or if this happened after her marriage. But we do know that they had children. And you know how we try to pick the best names possible when we have children, ones that we really like? Well, Hosea didn't have that privilege. He was told by God what to call his children. And you'll also remember that all names had meanings in those days. God told him to name his first child Jezreel, which had two meanings. First, Jezreel means scattered, and Israel would soon be scattered in exile by the Assyrians in the not too distant future. Second, Jezreel refers to the valley of Jezreel, an actual place where Jehu had massacred all the descendants of Ahab and had established his throne. Well, God directed Hosea to name his son Jezreel to remind the people of his promise to avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel by judging the house of Jehu. Judgment was coming. And the people would know this when they heard his son's name. Well, their second child was a girl, and they called her Lo Ruhamah, which means no mercy. God was saying that as long as you are pursuing your rebellious ways, I'm not going to show you mercy. No love. Well, their third child was a son, and he was named Lo Ami, meaning not my people. God was saying that if you continue to rebel, if you don't want to be part of my family, I'm not going to force you. It's your decision to belong or not to belong, to be my people or not my people. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel sorry for those children having the names they did. I thought my name was bad all these years, but nothing compared to theirs. But they were given their names by God, and they played an important role in the mission that Hosea had. Their names showed the people of Israel God's reaction to their unfaithfulness. They were a constant reminder to the people of what was coming if they didn't change. Judgment was coming. No mercy was coming. Not my people. That's serious stuff, isn't it? Well, in chapter 2, things start to fall apart for Hosea and Gomer. And she starts to step out on him and returns to her life of prostitution. And she keeps getting gifts from Hosea, even though she doesn't know they're from him. And she uses them and gives them to her other people or other gods. And she comes back and forth, and she uses everything that he has given her irresponsibly. And eventually she leaves Hosea completely, and the children as well, to live with a series of other men. But Hosea, he continues to care for her. He could have divorced her under the law of that time, but he chose not to, and he continued to love her. You see, he was showing God's character and commitment by his continuing faithfulness to his unfaithful wife. We don't know how many years Hosea lived this way, feeling rejected, feeling agonizing pain, but continuing to love. But then in chapter 3, we see that God tells Hosea to go and show your love to your wife again, though she is loved by another and is an adulteress. Hosea, he follows the Lord's instructions, and he goes and he finds Gomer. She had apparently been forced to sell herself as a bondservant, and now she found that no one wanted her. She was for sale. And Hosea comes and he pays 15 shekels of silver, a homer and a half of barley. He pays off her debts, and he commits to her once again. Now, the people watching this, watching what Homer was doing, they must have felt, this man is nuts. He's crazy, completely foolish. How could he do this? Well, look at verse 1 of chapter 3 again. The Lord said to me. That's how he could do it. It was the Lord. Hosea, go show your love to your wife again, for she is loved by another. She is an adulteress, but love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, for they turned to other gods and loved the sacred raisin cakes which were offered on idols' altars. The reason that Hosea was able to love Gomer as he did was because the love of God was in his heart. And Hosea loved her as God loved Israel. His relationship with Gomer was the same as God's relationship with Israel, with you and with me. This is God's character, the tender, loyal, unchanging, and undying love of God. Did the people realize this? Did they realize that Gomer was symbolic of them and their relationship with God? You know, Gomer had failed Hosea many, many times, been unfaithful many, many times. She had turned her back on him, walked out on him, was unfaithful, and now because of her lifestyle, she was worth nothing to anyone anymore. She had reached the bottom of the barrel, you could say. No one wanted her except Hosea. He'd always wanted her. He'd loved her so much. As much as God loves you and me. You see, no matter how low we go, God is willing to buy us back, to redeem us, and to lift us up again, just like Hosea did to Gomer. That's how he loves us. That's good news for us today. Really good news. Because we all fail in our commitment to God and in our Christian walk. We don't do what we know we should do. We do what we know we shouldn't do. Over and over again, just like Israel, just like Gomer. But this does not stop God from loving us. He wants us back. He chases after us. He woos us. Have you forgotten God? Have you become disloyal to him through everything that's been going on? Let's not let our situations in life diminish our love for him. Let's not let our worldly comfort, our worldly success, so to speak, blind us to our need for his love. In closing, there's a video link attached, and I encourage you to watch it. It's a little video of Hosea and Gomer. And as you watch it, be reminded of God's amazing love, as is so evident through Hosea. God, he will be for us always. That's the heart of the Father towards his children, towards you and to me. He's there for us always. But the question I leave you with is, are we for him? The choice is ours. We're going to continue on next week as we look more at the book of Hosea. And until we gather back together again, I pray you have a great week and stay safe. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care. God bless.